Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Diehlman at Halftime, the NBA podcast that tops all others. I'm your host, Larry Diehlman. Before we get into our featured content for today, I'd like to give a brief background of myself and the podcast in general. I am 23 years old. I am currently a graduate student at Louisiana State University pursuing sport management. In December 2022, I graduated from Rowan University, a public university in southern New Jersey. I earned 2 bachelor's degrees there. One was in sports communication and media, the other was in journalism. While I was at Rowan, I kept myself busy with extracurricular activities. One of them was writing for the school newspaper called The Wit. All but 2 articles were devoted to my original NBA column that was called, you guessed it, Diehlman at Halftime. I originally named it Halftime, but one of the editors put my name on the title one week, thus Diehlman at Halftime was born. So let's break down a typical episode format for this podcast. A quick disclaimer though, this podcast is not one that only covers the Lakers, Celtics, or the Bucks, for instance. Over the course of the season, we will cover all 30 NBA teams at least once. The format is very similar to what I wrote while I was at the WIT. One thing that's different is the addition of occasional guests. We won't have guests on every episode, but I will bring some on here and there to get differing perspectives. The actual guests and when they'll appear are to be determined. Each episode will start with a general overview of the NBA from the past week. This could be little news stories or a bombshell trade that just happened. Then we'll get into our main components of the episode: highlight, lowlight, random stat, and game of the week. The highlight section is where we'll look at a team that's doing well. It could be because of a winning streak, players are going crazy in the box score, the team is at the top of their respective conference, or whatever. One week, we might talk about Nikola Jokic and the Nuggets doing their thing. The next, we might discuss how the Washington Wizards are on a 5-game winning streak. You never know what could happen. The lowlight section is the exact opposite of what I just said about the highlights section. It could be because of a losing streak, players' stats are plummeting in the box score, the team is falling in their respective conference, or whatever. Yes, even teams like the Thunder, Celtics, or Sixers could represent this section for a week. Again, you never know what could happen. After that, we'll go into random stat. When I say random stat, I mean random stat. We might talk about how a player is averaging a crap ton of blocks per game lately. Or maybe insert player here is averaging insert number of 3-pointers per game here. For one article I wrote for my column at Rowan, I wrote about how athletes should stop going to barbers to get haircuts. No, I am not making this up. This was in early 2021 when COVID was at its peak. The Kansas City Chiefs almost lost half their team prior to the Super Bowl because a barber tested positive for the virus. And former Sixers teammates Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons were unable to play in the All-Star game because they had been exposed. Basically, be prepared for something interesting in this section each week. Then, we will continue doing the section called Game of the Week. This has been an exclusive feature on the Diehlman at Halftime podcast that did not exist while I wrote for the WIT. Here we look at the NBA schedule for the week to find a game that might be worth watching, and we'll briefly break it down. The range for games each week will be from the day I'm recording the episode until the day before the next episode. So for example, if I record an episode on Monday, the range will be from Monday through Sunday. This section could be any teams, anytime. Maybe we'll do Hawks Wizards one week because of the top 2 draft picks this year respectively. Atlanta's Zachary Risachet and Washington's Alex Sarr. Or maybe we'll talk about Sixers Clippers when Paul George returns to LA, or Knicks Timberwolves when Karl Anthony Towns returns to Minnesota. I enjoyed introducing this section last season, and I hope you enjoy its second season like I will. Finally, we'll conclude with a small section to wrap things up for the episode. I'd also like you to take notice of the change in platforms for Diehlman at Halftime. For those of you that listened to the podcast last year, we were exclusively on SoundCloud. Starting this season, however, I'm proud to present Diehlman at Halftime on Buzzsprout. Additionally, I have hooked up my Buzzsprout account with other platforms in their directory. These include, but are not limited to, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Please check my Buzzsprout page to see the full listing of platforms where this podcast is posted. The website is diehlmanathalftime.buzzsprout.com. That is D as in doctor, IEHLMAN ATHALFTIME. Diehlman at Halftime, all one word, no dashes, no periods. Buzzsprout, BUZZSPROUT.com. Now you can enjoy Diehlman at Halftime in a variety of formats. Now that we've explained all of that, let's get started. You know how I just went through this whole dialogue about each episode will feature this and here's the order for each episode? That's mostly true. But there will be a handful of episodes throughout the season that are what we call special editions. And you're in luck because the inaugural episode of Season 2 of Diehlman at Halftime is a special edition. In these episodes, the format will change a bit. Special editions may include, but are not limited to, Power Rankings predictions, All-Star Weekend, a playoff bracket, and more. Today's episode will cover the Power Rankings predictions. This means that I will rank each team 1 through 30 on how each stands with one another. For example, if I know that Team A is better than Team B, but not better than Team C, then I would rank them CAB. We'll have 3 sections of 10 teams each for rankings. The top section with teams 1 through 10 is called the Elite Teams. The middle section with teams 11 through 20 is called the You're Getting There But Not Quite teams. The bottom section with teams 21 through 30 is called Code Red, This Is Not a Drill. You'll see what I mean in just a few moments, so let's dive into it. And just like that, the NBA is back in session. The 2024-25 season should be another good one, with a new class of rookies joining the veterans and big names like Karl Anthony Towns, Paul George, and DeMar DeRozan switching squads. With banner number 18 in hand, the Boston Celtics retake the NBA record for most championships for a single team. The Celtics will be hard to stop, so can any of the other 29 teams prevent back-to-back parades in Beantown. To kick things off for Season 2, this episode is entitled 30 Marathons of 82. And you'll hear me say this quite often, so who's raising eyebrows at the moment as we begin with a special edition of Diehlman at Halftime. And please note the following predictions were made before the NBA season opener on Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024. Let's start off with the elite teams, the top 10 teams in the NBA, in my opinion, and please know we are going in a descending order. The Boston Celtics, Oklahoma City Thunder, New York Knicks, Philadelphia 76ers, Minnesota Timberwolves, Denver Nuggets, Dallas Mavericks, Indiana Pacers, Phoenix Suns, and the Milwaukee Bucks. My reasoning. I'm sure you can figure out why these teams are labeled as elite. It's safe to say the Boston Celtics are heavy favorites to repeat as champions. There's no denying their talent. Other teams in this section, like the Knicks, Sixers, and Mavericks, made off-season moves that could be dangerous for the rest of the league. New York landed Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns via trades. Philadelphia finally bid adieu to Tobias Harris in favor of Paul George. And Dallas, coming off of a finals loss, pried Klay Thompson away from Golden State. Teams like Oklahoma City, Minnesota, and Denver are still the top three in the Western Conference. The Suns and Bucks were huge disappointments last season, so they should have chips on their shoulders for improvement. One of the question marks here is Indiana. Despite the fact that they made the Eastern Conference Finals a few months ago, they took advantage of two injured teams in the process, Milwaukee and New York respectively. However, the Pacers front office signed Pascal Siakam long-term to keep him paired with Tyrese Halliburton. Overall, Boston had a cakewalk to the finals last year. Was it a cakewalk for the teams in the Western Conference playoffs? Not so much. Will that change this season? Now let's get to the you're getting there but not quite teams. Teams 11 through 20, and remember it's a descending order. The Sacramento Kings, Cleveland Cavaliers, Memphis Grizzlies, Orlando Magic, Miami Heat, New Orleans Pelicans, LA Lakers, LA Clippers, Houston Rockets, and Golden State Warriors. My reasoning. Teams in this section could go either way. Some could trend upward, others could head in the other direction. After Memphis's disaster last year due to injuries, a comeback may be in order with Ja Morant's return. They even picked up back-to-back consensus first-team All-American Zach Edey in the draft. The Lakers gave head coach Darvin Ham a pink slip and lured J.J. Redick out of the broadcast booth to become a first-time head coach. Miami will be a playoff team, just not early on. They enjoy snoozing in the regular season before awaking the beast in April. Their Florida buddy Orlando will be looking to bounce back from their first-round exit. Sacramento added DeMar DeRozan and re-signed Malik Monk to beef up their core and their chances of seriously contending. The Cavaliers, Pelicans, and Rockets have an abundance of young talent and good coaches. Their common issue? Getting over the hump of stronger teams in their respective conferences. Even with fans claiming that Klay Thompson was washed in his final year as a Warrior, they'll still miss his sharp shooting. Now, if you're not caught up on 2024 slang lingo, being washed basically translates to past their prime. Steph Curry is 36. How many more years can he carry a team single-handedly? None of these teams' issues, though, holds a candle to LA. The Clippers, that is. The Clippers faithful should be very, very concerned. Paul George is gone, and Kawhi Leonard is out indefinitely with right knee inflammation, and the Kawhi news just dropped the other day. Are we really expecting James Harden to turn back the clock and carry the team like his Houston days? Have your popcorn on standby, folks. Finally, let's get to Code Red. This is not a drill. Teams 21 through 30. The San Antonio Spurs, Atlanta Hawks, Toronto Raptors, Charlotte Hornets, Chicago Bulls, Utah Jazz, Portland Trail Blazers, Washington Wizards, Detroit Pistons, and the Brooklyn Nets. My reasoning. If you're a fan of teams that either underachieve or sport young rosters, this section is for you. You know this draft class is weak when the 55th overall pick, Bronny James, the son of LeBron James, is getting more media coverage than the actual top pick, Atlanta's Zachary Rissache. Victor Wembanyama's second season in San Antonio should be equally as scary as the first, especially with veteran guard Chris Paul throwing alley-oops to him. I'd like to see Charlotte take a step this year. They hired assistant coach Charles Lee away from Boston to lead their squad. LaMelo Ball's health will make or break their season. Chicago's situation is interesting. They lost DeMar DeRozan to Sacramento and traded Alex Caruso to Oklahoma City for Josh Giddey straight up. Lonzo Ball made a return in the preseason, too, after being sidelined for 2.5 years with injuries. But don't expect him to return to his old form so soon. Everyone else here is meh. With Mikal Bridges' departure from Brooklyn, the Nets might as well tank for Duke forward Cooper Flagg, a potential 2025 top draft pick. No one will take Portland, Washington, and Detroit seriously until they register a pulse. Atlanta, Utah, and Toronto need to move the gear shift from neutral to drive. That's usually how a car moves. While I don't expect most of these teams to exceed their already low expectations, I'll be glad to be proven wrong. And away we go. Well, that's all the time we have for today. I promise that next week will be the introduction of our usual highlight, lowlight, random stat, and game of the week. If you haven't already, make sure to follow me and the podcast accounts on social media. I have 2 X or Twitter accounts and 2 Instagram accounts. The podcast accounts are under @Diehlman_NBA. That is @D as in Doctor, IEHLMAN_NBA for both X and Instagram. My personal X account is @LarryDiehlman18. That is @LARRY, same last name, DIEHLMAN18. And my personal Instagram is @MrSports18. That is @MR_SPORTS18. They are also in the description on Buzzsprout, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And man, I've always wanted to say that phrase. And don't forget to spread the word about Diehlman at halftime. See you next time, fellow Hoops fans.